No, Thomas admitted, though there was significant pressure to do so once the story went viral. She's been suspended for 2 weeks, and upon return will undergo sensitivity training and be reassigned to a non-customer-facing role temporarily. Good, Harold said. People deserve second chances. Thomas looked relieved. I'm glad you feel that way. Not everyone would be so understanding. Understanding doesn't mean forgetting, Harold clarified. Just means recognizing we all fall short sometimes. They were interrupted by another knock at the door. Harold excused himself and opened it to find a delivery person holding a large box. Delivery for Harold Wilson, the young man said, checking his clipboard. Harold frowned in confusion. I didn't order anything. It's already paid for, sir. Just need your signature here. After signing, Harold brought the unexpected package inside. Thomas helped him open it, both men curious about its contents. Inside was a brand new laptop, top of the line, with all the accessories a student might need. A simple card was attached. For Lisa, from one friend to another. K.R. Harold stared at the gift, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face. Pride warred with gratitude, independence with practicality. That's incredibly generous, Thomas said, clearly impressed. Harold nodded slowly. It is. Too generous, maybe. You're thinking of not accepting it? Thomas asked, surprised. I saved those coins so I could give my granddaughter something myself, Harold explained. So she'd know. Her old grandpa could still provide for her in some small way. Before Thomas could respond, Lisa appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, drawn by the voices. Grandpa? What's going on? Her eyes fell on the open box and widened. Is that a gift? Harold said. From Mr. Reeves. Lisa approached, slowly, as if the laptop might disappear if she moved too quickly. For me? Really? She touched the sleek surface reverently, then looked up at her grandfather, suddenly concerned. But what about your coins? You worked so hard saving them. Harold looked at his granddaughter, at the excitement she couldn't quite hide, at the opportunity this machine represented for her future. His own father had taught him that pride was important, but not at the expense of common sense. And common sense told him that this gift would open doors for Lisa, that his jar of coins, however lovingly collected, simply couldn't. The coins will go towards something else, he said finally. Maybe your textbooks next semester. Lisa threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. Thank you, Grandpa, for everything. Over Lisa's shoulder, Harold noticed Thomas discreetly checking his watch. I should be going, the bank manager said. But there's one more thing. The corporate office would like to speak with you on Monday if you're available. They're interested in having you consult on our new customer service initiatives. Harold raised an eyebrow. Consult? At my age? Experience is valuable, Mr. Wilson, especially yours. After Thomas left, Harold sat in his favorite armchair, watching Lisa explore her new laptop's features with growing excitement. His phone rang, an unusual occurrence on a Saturday morning. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Hello? He answered cautiously. Harold? It's Keanu Reeves. Hope you don't mind me calling. The bank manager gave me your number. Harold found himself smiling. Not at all. We just received your gift. It's too much, really. It's nothing, Keanu said, his voice warm even through the phone line. Just wanted to make sure it arrived safely, and to ask if you'd join me for lunch tomorrow. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Someone? Harold asked, curious. The director of the film I'm working on. He heard our story and, well, I think you might be perfect for a small role we're casting. If you're interested, that is. Harold nearly dropped the phone. A role in a Hollywood movie? Me? Lisa looked up from her laptop, her eyes questioning. Harold gave her a thumbs up, and she grinned in response. Just a small part, Keanu clarified. A few lines, but authentic voices. Matter in storytelling, what do you say? Harold thought about how much his life had changed in just 24 hours, all because he'd stood his ground over a jar of coins. about how connections formed in the most unexpected ways, about second chances and new beginnings, even at 73. 6 months later, Harold stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the tie that Diane had insisted he wear for the premiere. His fingers, slightly stiff with arthritis, worked carefully at the knot. Behind him, Lisa sat on the edge of the bathtub, scrolling through social media on her new laptop. "Grandpa, have you seen how many people are talking about the movie online? And they're especially excited about you," Harold chuckled. "About me? I'm hardly in it. Just that one scene." "But it's an important scene," Lisa insisted. "Everyone says it's the heart of the whole film." Harold finished with his tie and turned to face his granddaughter. At 16 and a half, she seemed to grow more like her grandmother every day. The same determined chin, the same thoughtful eyes. The laptop had proven to be more than just a gift. It had become a tool for her future, helping her maintain her straight-A average while applying for college scholarships. "How do I look?" He asked. Lisa stood up and straightened his tie slightly, like a movie star. The doorbell rang and Lisa rushed to answer it. Harold followed more slowly, still marveling at how much his life had changed since that Friday afternoon at First National Bank. His small role in Keanu's film, playing a veteran who shares wisdom with the main character in a pivotal moment, had expanded during filming from 1 scene to 3. The director had been impressed with Harold's natural delivery, his authentic presence on camera. "You can't teach that kind of genuineness," he'd said after their first day of shooting. Keanu stood at the front door, dressed in a simple black suit. A car waited at the curb, not a limousine, but a comfortable town car with a driver. "Ready?" "For your big night?" Keanu asked, extending his hand. Harold shook it firmly. "As ready as I'll ever be." Diane appeared from the kitchen, camera in hand. "Wait, I need a picture of you two before you go." Harold and Keanu posed together on the front porch, an unlikely friendship captured in pixels. Over the months of filming, they had developed a genuine bond. Keanu had come to Sunday dinners at Harold's house whenever his schedule allowed. Harold had visited the set even on days he wasn't filming, watching the process with fascination and occasionally sharing stories with the crew during breaks. He couldn't hear what had been said before he arrived, but he could read the aftermath clearly enough. The older man's face showed the unmistakable shadow of humiliation, and several customers looked away uncomfortably, unwilling to involve themselves. "Next window, please," called another teller, breaking the moment. But Keanu didn't move toward the open window. Instead, he walked directly to where the elderly man stood. As he approached, he caught the tail end of the teller's words. "Take your coins elsewhere. We have paying customers waiting." The elderly man's fingers tightened around his jar. "These are payment," he said softly. "They're still American currency, last I checked." Keanu stopped beside the older man. "Excuse me," he said. Both the teller and the elderly man looked up. The teller's eyes widened slightly as she registered who was speaking, her professional mask slipping for just a moment. "Is there a problem here?" Keanu asked. The elderly man looked at him not with recognition, but with the wary curiosity of someone unused to strangers stepping in. "It's nothing I can't handle, son," he said, though his voice betrayed his fatigue. Keanu nodded respectfully. "I'm sure you can, but sometimes it's nice to have company while handling things." He turned to the teller whose name badge read, Melanie. I couldn't help overhearing. "This gentleman is trying to deposit his coins?" Melanie's demeanor had changed dramatically. Her back straightened, and a smile appeared that hadn't been there moments before. "Mr. Reeves, what an unexpected surprise. We're just having a small issue with procedure. We don't normally process large amounts of loose change without prior arrangement." "I see," Keanu said, his voice level. He turned back to the elderly man. "I'm Keanu," he said, extending his hand. The man's weathered hand clasped his firmly. "Harold Wilson?" "Those look heavy, Mr. Wilson. Mind if I ask what they're for?" Harold hesitated, then seemed to decide Keanu was trustworthy. "My granddaughter's turning 16. Needs a laptop for school. Been saving these up for months now." Something in Keanu's expression softened. He understood sacrifice. He understood what it meant to care for family, and he understood the dignity of doing things your own way. "That's a good grandfather," he said simply. Then he turned back to Melanie. "I'd like to open an account today, but first I'd appreciate it if you could help Mr. Wilson with his deposit." Melanie's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, but our coin counter is actually down for maintenance, and counting by hand would take time," Keanu finished for her. "That's all right, I've got plenty today." He glanced around the bank, noticing how many people were now watching. Some had recognized him, whispering to each other or discreetly taking out phones. Others simply sensed something unusual happening. "Perhaps your manager could help expedite things," Keanu suggested, his tone pleasant but firm. "The manager is in a meeting," Melanie said, repeating the lie she'd told Harold. From somewhere behind them, a door opened. "Is everything all right, Melanie?" a man in a tailored suit asked, approaching the counter. His eyes moved from the teller to Harold, then widened as they landed on Keanu. "Oh, welcome to First National, sir. I'm Thomas Blackwood, the branch manager." "Funny," Harold said quietly. "I was just told you were in a meeting." The manager blinked in confusion, then looked sharply at Melanie, whose cheeks had flushed red. "Mr. Blackwood," Keanu said, stepping forward to shake the manager's hand. "I was hoping to open an account today, but it seems Mr. Wilson here has been waiting to make a deposit and I wouldn't feel right going ahead of him." Thomas Blackwood looked at the jar of coins, then at Harold, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Of course. Mr. Wilson, we'd be happy to count and deposit your coins. If you'll both follow me, we can use the office counter machine, much faster than doing it by hand." Harold looked surprised, then suspicious. "That's not what I was told a few minutes ago." The manager's expression tightened. "I apologize for any miscommunication. Customer service is our priority at First National, regardless of how large or small the transaction." Keanu placed a gentle hand on Harold's shoulder. "What do you say, Mr. Wilson? Shall we get those coins counted?" Harold studied Keanu's face for a moment, then nodded. "I'd appreciate that." As they followed the manager toward his office, the other customers in line began to murmur more loudly. A young woman in scrubs spoke up. "That was wrong. What happened?" she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I watched that teller laugh at this gentleman. Said only beggars pay with coins." The bank fell silent again. The manager stopped walking, turning slowly to look at Melanie, whose face had gone from red to white. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice low. Melanie opened her mouth, closed it, then looked down at her keyboard. "I may have said something. It was just a joke. We're very busy, and counting coins takes time away from other customers." An older woman in line shook her head. "It wasn't a joke, it was cruel." Keanu watched as Harold straightened his back, his dignity returning. "I've been banking here for 43 years, Harold said. "Never missed a payment on my mortgage. Never bounced a check. Kept my money here even when that new bank opened across town with better interest rates. I thought that counted for something." "It absolutely does," the manager said firmly, "and I assure you, we will address this properly." He turned to Melanie. "Please take your break now, we'll discuss this later." As Melanie gathered her things and hurried away from the counter, the people in line parted to let her through. No one met her eyes. In the manager's office, Harold set his jar on the desk. The coin counter hummed to life, and the manager explained how it worked. "Just pour them in here, Mr. Wilson. It sorts them automatically." Harold nodded, but his hands trembled slightly as he lifted the heavy jar. Keanu stepped forward. "May I help?" he asked. Harold hesitated, then nodded. Together they tilted the jar, and coins cascaded into the machine's hopper, silver and copper catching the light, the physical embodiment of months of saving. "My wife and I started saving coins when we first got married," Harold said as they watched the counter work. "Kept it up our whole lives. She passed 3 years ago, but I still do it. Feels like she's still part of it somehow." Keanu nodded, understanding the power of rituals, of connections to those we've lost. "How long were you married?" he asked. 51. Years, Harold replied, a smile softening the lines of his face. Met her at a dance hall in '68 right after I got back from Vietnam. Prettiest girl I'd ever seen, and somehow she said yes when I asked her to dance. As Harold spoke, the counter continued tallying. The manager busied himself with paperwork, giving them space for their conversation. Your granddaughter, Keanu said. What's she like? Harold's eyes brightened. Lisa, smart as a whip, wants to be a doctor someday. Works harder than anyone I know, has a part-time job after school even with all her homework. Her mom, my daughter, does her best, but it's been tough since the divorce. The counter finished with a beep. The display showed $342.87. Well, Mr. Wilson, the manager said, that's quite a substantial deposit. Would you like that in your checking or savings account? Checking, please, Harold replied. Need to access it for Lisa's birthday next month. As the manager processed the deposit, a knock came at the office door. A young bank employee poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Blackwood, but there's something you should see. The manager excused himself and stepped outside. Through the glass walls of the office, they could see him being shown something on a phone. His expression grew serious. When he returned, he closed the door behind him. It seems someone has posted about what happened on social media. It's already getting significant attention. Keanu nodded thoughtfully. In the age of smartphones and instant sharing, privacy was increasingly rare. I hope Mr. Wilson's experience helps your bank remember what matters, he said simply. The manager nodded, properly chastened. It will. And Mr. Wilson, your deposit has been processed. I've also added a $100 courtesy credit to your account. Though I know that doesn't make up for your experience today. Harold looked surprised. That's not necessary. I insist, the manager said. It's the least we can do. As they prepared to leave the office, Keanu turned to Harold. Where are you headed after this? I was going to grab some coffee across the street. Would you join me? Harold studied him for a moment, then smiled. I think I'd like that. Since I had a coffee with a new friend. Together they walked out of the manager's office, back into the main area of the bank, where several customers were still waiting, watching the unexpected scene unfold. The coffee shop across from the bank was small but cozy, with worn leather chairs and the rich aroma of freshly ground beans filling the air. A bell chimed softly as Keanu held the door open for Harold. Only a few tables were occupied, mostly by people focused on laptop screens or books. No one looked up when they entered, a small blessing that Keanu silently appreciated. What can I get you, Mr. Wilson? Keanu asked as they approached the counter. Harold, please, the older man insisted. Mr. Wilson was my father, and just a regular coffee is fine. Black. Keanu smiled. A man after my own heart. He turned to the young barista, who was doing a remarkable job of maintaining her composure, despite clearly recognizing him. 2 black coffees, please, and whatever pastry you recommend. The blueberry scones just came out of the oven, she suggested, her voice only slightly higher than normal. Perfect. 2 of those as well. As Keanu reached for his wallet, Harold put a hand on his arm. Let me get this, he said. It's the least I can do after you helped me back there. Keanu considered the offer. He could easily afford it, of course, but he understood what it meant for Harold to make the gesture. Dignity wasn't about money. It was about being seen, as capable as having something to offer. How about this, Keanu suggested. You get the coffee, I'll get the scones. Deal? Harold nodded, satisfied with the compromise. He pulled out his wallet and carefully counted out exact change, more coins, for the coffees. The barista accepted them with a warm smile, unlike the bank teller's disdain. My grandmother always paid with change, she said as she dropped the coins into the register. Said it was how she budgeted, kept her from overspending. Harold's face brightened. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. They took their coffees and scones to a corner table by the window, where they could see people coming and going, from the bank across the street. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, sipping their coffee and watching the world outside. You don't look like a banker, Harold said finally, studying Keanu with curious eyes. What brings you to First National on a Friday afternoon? Keanu set down his coffee cup. I'm in town filming a movie. Need to set up a local account for some expenses. Harold's eyebrows rose slightly. A movie, huh? Anything I might have seen? You in? Keanu couldn't help but smile. It was refreshing to meet someone who didn't immediately recognize him, who saw him as just another person. Maybe. Ever see The Matrix? Or John Wick? Harold shook his head. Can't say that I have. My wife liked the movies, but since she passed, I don't go much. TV's mostly news these days. I understand, Keanu said, and he did. Grief changed the landscape of a person's life, rearranged the furniture of their habits. The Matrix was this science fiction film about a man who discovers the world isn't what it seems. And John Wick, well, that one's about a man who goes to great lengths to right a wrong. Like what you did back there? Harold asked, nodding toward the bank. Keanu shook his head. That was nothing, just the right thing to do. Not everyone does the right thing these days, Harold said, breaking off a piece of his scone, especially when it's inconvenient. As they continued talking, neither noticed the occasional phone camera discreetly pointed their way, or the text, messages flying between the coffee shop patrons and their friends. In the digital age, privacy in public spaces had become an illusion, especially for someone like Keanu. Across the street, the bank had returned to its normal rhythm, though the atmosphere remained charged. Thomas Blackwood, the manager, had called Melanie into his office for what the other employees could tell was a serious conversation. Customers continued to come and go, but many were now talking about what they'd witnessed or heard from others. Back in the coffee shop, Harold was sharing stories about his granddaughter Lisa. She's got her heart set on medical school, he said, his voice warm with pride. Been talking about being a doctor since she was 8 years old and fixed up a bird with a broken wing. Nursed that thing back to health in a shoebox in her bedroom. Sounds like she's found her calling, Keanu said. That's a gift, knowing what you're meant to do. Harold nodded, then hesitated before continuing. The laptop. It's not just a birthday present. Her old computer died last month and she's been staying late at school to use their computers for homework. My daughter, she's a nurse, works long hours. She's been trying to save up, but with rent going up and everything else, he trailed off, not wanting to sound like he was complaining. Keanu understood the unspoken. The struggles of ordinary people weren't so different from those he'd known growing up. Before fame, before Hollywood, he'd watched his own mother work multiple jobs to keep them afloat. Your granddaughter is lucky to have you, Keanu said simply. Harold smiled, but his eyes held a shadow. I wish I could do more. Time was a man, could work hard and provide for his family. Now seems like everything costs more than what folks can earn. They were interrupted by the chime of the door as a group of teenagers entered the coffee shop, their excited voices filling the quiet space. One of them spotted Keanu and froze, nudging her friends. Soon, all four were stealing glances in their direction, whispering among themselves. I think you've been recognized, Harold observed with amusement. Keanu nodded slightly. It happens. Does it bother you, not having privacy? Keanu considered the question. Sometimes, but it's part of the job. And occasionally it means I can make a difference just by showing up. He glanced back toward the bank. Like today, one of the teenagers finally gathered the courage to approach their table. She was maybe 16, Lisa's age, with nervous hands and determined eyes. Excuse me, she said. I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you Keanu Reeves? Keanu smiled kindly. I am. Would it be okay if I got a picture with you? My mom is a huge fan. She's been having a rough time lately and it would really make her day. Before Keanu could answer, Harold started to stand. I should let you handle this. Thank you for the coffee and conversation. Please stay, Keanu said, then turned to the teenager. I'd be happy to take a picture, but only if Mr. Wilson here can join us. He's the real hero today. The girl looked confused but nodded eagerly. Of course. Harold settled back into his chair, surprised but touched by the gesture. The teenager handed her phone to one of her friends who lined up the shot. Could you tell me your name? Keanu asked the girl. Lily, she replied. Lily, this is Harold. Harold, Lily. They exchanged pleasantries as the friend took several photos. Then Lily thanked them both and returned to her group, practically vibrating with excitement. You didn't have to include me in that, Harold said after they'd gone. I wanted to, Keanu replied. Besides, you never know what impact a small gesture might have. As they finished their coffee, Harold checked his watch. I should be getting home. My daughter drops Lisa off after school on Fridays. We usually have dinner together. Family dinner, Keanu said with a nod. That's important. They stood and gathered their things, making their way to the door. Outside, the late afternoon sun had softened, casting a golden light over the street. Which way are you headed? Keanu asked. Oak Street, Harold replied. About 8 blocks from here. I usually take the bus, but it's a nice day for walking. I could give you a ride, Keanu offered. My motorcycle's just around the corner, Harold chuckled. Haven't been on a motorcycle since 1969. My wife would probably roll over in her grave if I climbed on one now. Rain check then, Keanu said with a smile. Maybe next time I'm in town. They shook hands, a gesture that felt inadequate for the unexpected connection they'd formed in just a few hours. What had begun as a simple act of kindness had evolved into something more, a reminder that beneath the roles people played and the assumptions they made, there was always the possibility of genuine human connection. Thank you, Harold said, his grip firm despite his age. Not just for what you did at the bank, but for treating me like a person worth talking to. You are, Keanu said simply, and thank you for reminding me what matters. They parted ways, Harold walking slowly but steadily down the sidewalk, Keanu watching until he turned the corner. Neither man knew that their brief encounter had already begun rippling outward through social media, through text messages and phone calls, through the invisible networks that connected people in the digital age. By the time Harold reached his small house on Oak Street, the first news alerts were already pinging on phones across the city. Keanu Reeves stands up for elderly man humiliated at local bank. And by the time Lisa arrived for dinner, her phone buzzing with messages from friends, the story had grown wings, soaring beyond their city to touch lives they would never know. Grandpa, Lisa said as she burst through the door, her eyes wide, with disbelief. Did you really meet Keanu Reeves today? Tanya says there's a picture of you with him all over Instagram. Harold set down the pot of stew he'd been stirring and looked at his granddaughter in confusion. Instagram? What are you talking about? Lisa pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. There they were, Harold, Keanu, and the teenage girl, from the coffee shop, smiling together as if they were old friends. The caption read, "Just met Keanu Reeves and this awesome gentleman who was disrespected at First National Bank. Keanu called him the real hero. Be excellent to each other." Harold stared at the image, unsure how to feel about his private moment, becoming so public. But as Lisa scrolled through the comments, hundreds of them, filled with support for him and anger at how he'd been treated, he began to understand that something larger than himself was unfolding. Trending? What does that even mean? Harold asked as he set 2 bowls of beef stew on the kitchen table. The rich aroma of slow-cooked meat and vegetables filled the small dining area, competing with the suddenly buzzing atmosphere created by Lisa's revelation. Lisa pulled up a chair and sat down, her fingers still flying over her phone screen. It means thousands of people are talking about what happened to you today. Look at these comments. She turned the phone toward her grandfather. Harold squinted at the small text, wishing he'd remembered to put his reading glasses in his pocket that morning. "This is why Keanu is the internet's favorite human being," Lisa read aloud. "But also big respect to this gentleman who stood his ground." She scrolled down. "My grandfather saved coins his whole life too. People who mock others for how they manage their money are the worst." Harold shook his head in disbelief. "All this fuss over some coins and a rude bank teller? Don't people have better things to worry about?" "It's not just about the coins, Grandpa," Lisa explained, finally setting down her phone to pick up her spoon. "It's about respect, about standing up for people. That's why it's resonating with so many people." As they ate dinner, Lisa explained the concept of going viral to her grandfather, who listened with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. The world had changed so much in his lifetime, from party-line telephones to pocket computers that connected people across the globe in an instant. "Mom's going to flip when she hears about this," Lisa said between bites of stew. "She loves Keanu Reeves, says he's one of the few genuine people in Hollywood." "He seemed like a decent sort," Harold agreed. "Didn't put on airs, just treated me like a regular person." "That's exactly why people love him," Lisa said. "And now they love you too, Grandpa." Harold waved away the notion. "They don't even know me. But they recognize what happened to you. Being dismissed because you're older, being judged for how you pay for things. That resonates with people." After dinner, Lisa insisted on showing Harold some of the news articles that had already appeared online. The story had been picked up by several local news outlets and was spreading to national entertainment sites. Most included the coffee shop photo, and some had statements from witnesses at the bank. "First National Bank deeply regrets the incident and is taking appropriate action," read one statement from the bank's corporate communications department. "This isolated occurrence does not reflect our values or our commitment to treating all customers with dignity and respect." "Bet they're sorry now," Lisa said with a hint of righteous satisfaction. Harold wasn't sure how to feel about all the attention. Part of him was gratified that the teller's behavior was being called out, not just for his sake but for anyone else who might have been treated the same way. Another part felt uncomfortable with strangers discussing his life, forming opinions about a moment they hadn't fully witnessed. "What about the teller?" he asked. "Melanie, what's happening with her?" Lisa scrolled through more articles. "Doesn't say specifically, just that the bank is taking appropriate action." "Why? Are you worried about her?" Harold stirred the last of his stew thoughtfully. "Being unkind doesn't make someone a bad person, just means they made a bad choice. Wouldn't want her to lose her job over one mistake." Lisa looked at her grandfather with a mixture of admiration and exasperation. "That's so you, Grandpa. Someone treats you terribly, and you still worry about them. When you get to my age, you realize everyone's fighting their own battles," Harold said. "Doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it helps explain it sometimes." Later that evening, Harold's daughter Diane arrived home from her nursing shift, exhausted but alert with curiosity, after receiving multiple texts from friends about her father's unexpected fame. "Dad, why didn't you call me?" she asked as she hung up her coat. "I had to hear about this from Beth in radiology, of all people," Harold shrugged. "Didn't seem like something worth bothering you about during your shift. Besides, it all happened so fast." Diane sat down at the kitchen table where Lisa was showing her the various posts and articles. "I can't believe Keanu Reeves was just casually hanging out with my father today," she said, shaking her head in amazement. "And all because of that jar of coins you've been saving for Lisa's laptop," Harold reminded her. Diane's expression softened. "Dad, I told you we'd figure something out for that. You don't need to spend your savings." "What else am I saving for?" Harold asked simply. "Seeing my granddaughter succeed. That's worth more than any retirement cruise or fancy TV." The three generations sat together at the kitchen table reviewing the day's events and the unexpected ripples they had created. None of them noticed the black sedan that drove slowly past their house, or the driver who checked the address against the one on his phone before continuing down the street. The next morning, Harold woke to the sound of knocking at his front door. Pulling on his robe, he shuffled through the living room, wondering who would be visiting at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. When he opened the door, he found Thomas Blackwood, the bank manager, standing on his porch holding a small gift basket. "Mr. Wilson," Thomas said, looking slightly uncomfortable. "I hope I'm not disturbing you too early." "Been up since 6, Harold replied. "Military habits die hard. Come on in." Thomas stepped inside, glancing around the modest but meticulously kept home. Photos of family lined the walls. Harold's late wife Diane at various ages, Lisa growing from a toddler to a teenager, a lifetime captured in frames. "I wanted to personally apologize again for your experience yesterday," Thomas said, setting the gift basket on the coffee table. And to let you know that we've implemented some changes at the branch effective immediately. Harold gestured for Thomas to sit down. What kind of changes? For one, we're retraining all staff on respectful customer service, regardless of transaction, type, or amount. We're also designating certain hours specifically for coin counting and other services that might take more time, so no one feels rushed or unwelcome. Harold nodded approvingly. And Melanie? The teller? Thomas hesitated. We've taken appropriate disciplinary action. You fired her? Harold asked directly. No, Thomas admitted, though there was significant pressure to do so once the story went viral. She's been suspended for 2 weeks, and upon return will undergo sensitivity training and be reassigned to a non-customer-facing role temporarily. Good, Harold said. People deserve second chances. Thomas looked relieved. I'm glad you feel that way. Not everyone would be so understanding. Understanding doesn't mean forgetting, Harold clarified. Just means recognizing we all fall short sometimes. They were interrupted by another knock at the door. Harold excused himself and opened it to find a delivery person holding a large box. Delivery for Harold Wilson, the young man said, checking his clipboard. Harold frowned in confusion. I didn't order anything. It's already paid for, sir. Just need your signature here. After signing, Harold brought the unexpected package inside. Thomas helped him open it, both men curious about its contents. Inside was a brand new laptop, top of the line, with all the accessories a student might need. A simple card was attached. For Lisa, from one friend to another. K.R. Harold stared at the gift, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face. Pride warred with gratitude, independence with practicality. That's incredibly generous, Thomas said, clearly impressed. Harold nodded slowly. It is. Too generous, maybe. You're thinking of not accepting it? Thomas asked, surprised. I saved those coins so I could give my granddaughter something myself, Harold explained. So she'd know. Her old grandpa could still provide for her in some small way. Before Thomas could respond, Lisa appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, drawn by the voices. Grandpa? What's going on? Her eyes fell on the open box and widened. Is that a gift? Harold said. From Mr. Reeves. Lisa approached, slowly, as if the laptop might disappear if she moved too quickly. For me? Really? She touched the sleek surface reverently, then looked up at her grandfather, suddenly concerned. But what about your coins? You worked so hard saving them. Harold looked at his granddaughter, at the excitement she couldn't quite hide, at the opportunity this machine represented for her future. His own father had taught him that pride was important, but not at the expense of common sense. And common sense told him that this gift would open doors for Lisa, that his jar of coins, however lovingly collected, simply couldn't. The coins will go towards something else, he said finally. Maybe your textbooks next semester. Lisa threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. Thank you, Grandpa, for everything. Over Lisa's shoulder, Harold noticed Thomas discreetly checking his watch. I should be going, the bank manager said. But there's one more thing. The corporate office would like to speak with you on Monday if you're available. They're interested in having you consult on our new customer service initiatives. Harold raised an eyebrow. Consult? At my age? Experience is valuable, Mr. Wilson, especially yours. After Thomas left, Harold sat in his favorite armchair, watching Lisa explore her new laptop's features with growing excitement. His phone rang, an unusual occurrence on a Saturday morning. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Hello? He answered cautiously. Harold? It's Keanu Reeves. Hope you don't mind me calling. The bank manager gave me your number. Harold found himself smiling. Not at all. We just received your gift. It's too much, really. It's nothing, Keanu said, his voice warm even through the phone line. Just wanted to make sure it arrived safely, and to ask if you'd join me for lunch tomorrow. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Someone? Harold asked, curious. The director of the film I'm working on. He heard our story and, well, I think you might be perfect for a small role we're casting. If you're interested, that is. Harold nearly dropped the phone. A role in a Hollywood movie? Me? Lisa looked up from her laptop, her eyes questioning. Harold gave her a thumbs up, and she grinned in response. Just a small part, Keanu clarified. A few lines, but authentic voices. Matter in storytelling, what do you say? Harold thought about how much his life had changed in just 24 hours, all because he'd stood his ground over a jar of coins. About how connections formed in the most unexpected ways. About second chances and new beginnings, even at 73. 6 months later, Harold stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the tie that Diane had insisted he wear for the premiere. His fingers, slightly stiff with arthritis, worked carefully at the knot. Behind him, Lisa sat on the edge of the bathtub, scrolling through social media on her new laptop. Grandpa, have you seen how many people are talking about the movie online? And they're especially excited about you. Harold chuckled. About me? I'm hardly in it. Just that one scene. But it's an important scene, Lisa insisted. Everyone says it's the heart of the whole film. Harold finished with his tie and turned to face his granddaughter. At 16 and a half, she seemed to grow more like her grandmother every day. The same determined chin, the same thoughtful eyes. The laptop had proven to be more than just a gift. It had become a tool for her future, helping her maintain her straight-A average while applying for college scholarships. How do I look? He asked. Lisa stood up and straightened his tie slightly, like a movie star. The doorbell rang and Lisa rushed to answer it. Harold followed more slowly, still marveling at how much his life had changed since that Friday afternoon at First National Bank. His small role in Keanu's film, playing a veteran who shares wisdom with the main character in a pivotal moment, had expanded during filming from 1 scene to 3. The director had been impressed with Harold's natural delivery, his authentic presence on camera. You can't teach that kind of genuineness, he'd said after their first day of shooting. Keanu stood at the front door dressed in a simple black suit. A car waited at the curb, not a limousine, but a comfortable town car with a driver. Ready? For your big night? Keanu asked, extending his hand. Harold shook it firmly. As ready as I'll ever be. Diane appeared from the kitchen, camera in hand. Wait, I need a picture of you two before you go. Harold and Keanu posed together on the front porch, an unlikely friendship captured in pixels. Over the months of filming, they had developed a genuine bond. Keanu had come to Sunday dinners at Harold's house whenever his schedule allowed. Harold had visited the set even on days he wasn't filming, watching the process with fascination and occasionally sharing stories with the crew during breaks. Lisa, you too, Diane insisted, waving her daughter into the frame. As they prepared to leave, Harold turned to his daughter. You sure you don't want to come? Diane shook her head. Someone has to work the night shift. Besides, this is your moment. You and Lisa enjoy it. In the car, Lisa could barely contain her excitement. I still can't believe this is happening. My grandfather, in a movie with Keanu Reeves. Believe it, Keanu said with a smile. Your grandfather stole every scene he was in. The test audiences loved him. Harold looked out the window as the familiar streets of his neighborhood gave way to the downtown area, bright with lights against the evening sky. Never thought I'd be going to a movie premiere at my age. Margaret would have gotten such a kick out of this. Your wife? Lisa asked gently. Harold nodded. She always said life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. The theater was crowded with people when they arrived, some in elegant evening wear, others in more casual attire. Cameras flashed as Keanu emerged from the car, and the crowd's excitement grew when they realized who was with him. It's him, the coin jar guy, someone called out. Harold looked startled. Despite the interviews he'd done, the social media attention, and now the film, he still thought of himself as just Harold Wilson, retired watchman and grandfather. Not someone people recognized on sight. As they made their way down the red carpet, several reporters called out questions. Harold, how does it feel to be making your film debut at 73? Mr. Wilson, over here, Did you ever imagine your stand at the bank would lead to this? Keanu stayed close, guiding Harold through the chaos with the ease of someone long accustomed to such attention. Lisa followed, wide-eyed but composed, proud to be part of her grandfather's unexpected journey. Inside the theater, they found their seats, center section, perfect view of the screen. As the lights dimmed and the film began, Harold felt a strange calm settle over him. Whatever happened next, this moment was real. This connection he'd formed with Keanu, the doors that had opened for him and for Lisa, the chance to share his story, all of it mattered in ways he was still discovering. The film told the story of a man rebuilding his life after loss, themes that resonated deeply with Harold's own experience after Margaret's passing. Keanu's character, a former architect who had abandoned his career after tragedy, found his way back to meaning through unexpected encounters with ordinary people who showed extraordinary courage. Harold's first scene appeared about 40 minutes into the film. The audience stirred with recognition as his character, a Vietnam veteran named Ray, met Keanu's character at a neighborhood diner. Their conversation, largely improvised during filming, touched on resilience, purpose, and the courage to begin again. "The hardest thing isn't surviving loss," Harold's character said, his voice steady and true. "It's choosing to fully live afterward, to risk caring again." When the film ended and the credits rolled, the audience applauded enthusiastically. Harold was surprised to see his name appear on the screen, not just as a bit player, but with a supporting role credit. Keanu hadn't mentioned that. At the after-party, held in an elegantly renovated warehouse space downtown, Harold found himself approached by people he'd only seen in magazines or on television. They complimented his performance, asked about his experience, treated him like a colleague rather than a novelty. Lisa stayed close, occasionally whispering identifications of particularly famous individuals who stopped to speak with her grandfather. Her eyes widened when the director approached with a well-known producer in tow. "Harold," the director said warmly, "I want you to meet someone who's very interested in your story." The producer extended her hand. "Mr. Wilson, your performance was remarkable. So natural, so authentic. We're developing a project about everyday heroes, ordinary people who stand up for what's right in small but significant ways. We'd love to talk to you about consulting, possibly even taking on another role." Harold looked to Keanu, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm hardly an actor," Harold protested. "Just got lucky." "No such thing as luck in this business," the producer replied. "Just talent and opportunity. You have both." As the evening continued, Harold found a quiet moment to step outside onto the venue's balcony. The city lights spread out before him, a constellation of human activity and connection. He thought about how a simple jar of coins had somehow led him here, to this improbable moment. Keanu joined him, 2 glasses of sparkling water in hand. "Needed a break from the crowd?" Harold accepted the offered drink gratefully. "Just taking it all in. 6 months ago, I was just an old man that most people looked right through. Now this." He gestured toward the party inside. "You were never just anything," Keanu said. "The world just wasn't paying attention." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, sipping their drinks and watching the city below. "I ran into someone interesting last week," Keanu said finally. "Melanie Brooks." Harold looked up in surprise. "The bank teller?" Keanu nodded. "She's working at a community center now, running a financial literacy program for seniors, teaching them about banking, technology, how to avoid scams. She recognized me and came over to talk." "What did she say?" "She wanted me to tell you something if I saw you. That she's sorry, truly sorry, for how she treated you, and that your story changed her life, made her rethink a lot of things." Harold nodded slowly. "Good for her. Takes courage to change course." Inside, Lisa appeared at the doorway, excitement clear on her face. "Grandpa, the producer wants to introduce you to someone else." Harold turned to Keanu. "Duty calls, I suppose." As they walked back inside together, Harold reflected on the strange, wonderful journey that had brought him here. From the humiliation at the bank to this moment of unexpected triumph, it had all unfolded from a single instance where he had stood his ground, where he had insisted on his own dignity, and from Keanu's simple decision to see him, truly see him, when others had looked past. The following morning, Harold returned to his routine. Coffee at dawn, newspaper at the kitchen table, a call to check in with Diane before her day shift at the hospital. But now there were new elements too. Emails from the producer to answer, a script to read, plans to make. When the mail arrived, he sorted through it at the kitchen table. Among the usual bills and flyers was a small package with no return address. Inside, he found a sealed jar, empty except for a single quarter at the bottom. A note was wrapped around it. Every journey begins with a single coin. Thank you for reminding me what really matters. MB. Harold smiled and placed the jar on his windowsill, where the morning light caught the single quarter inside, making it shine like something precious. Later that day, when Lisa came over after school, she noticed the jar immediately. What's that? Grandpa? Just a reminder, Harold said, that small things can lead to big changes, that every person has value whether they're paying with coins or credit cards, and that it's never too late for a new chapter. Lisa smiled and opened her laptop, the one that had started it all. Speaking of new chapters, want to see the scholarship essay I'm working on? It's about my biggest inspiration. Let me guess, Harold said with a wink. Keanu Reeves? Lisa shook her head, her eyes filled with love and pride. No, Grandpa. It's about you.